Hey Eagle fans and fellow political junkies, welcome to a special edition video for my vlog that I am going to be doing on the 2016 election. Those people who know me know that I really like politics. I've been sort of a political junkie my whole life. I was a political science major and undergraduate for college, and I've always enjoyed following the political process and presidential elections especially. 4 years ago, during the 2012 election, I was doing a regular blog, written blog, sort of tracking the election and where it was going. I had a few people that were asking me what my thoughts were on this election, so I figured I would do this as a way to sort of let you know what I'm thinking just from an objective standpoint of what's happening with the election. I don't really want to get into the specific candidates. Frankly, I'm not thrilled with either one of them, but I honestly do have a preference as to one I'd rather see win than the other. I don't want to get into that in this video. But like when I do my Eagles prediction videos, I'm going to still try and remain objective about this and not let that really taint how I'm going to be looking at this. I will say that it's obviously been a very nasty election, and it's going to be a very interesting election in terms of where the country goes from here, because I think whoever wins tomorrow, it's going to really be a difficult step for the country to move on, and for the president, whoever that is, to bring us together. This election does have some interesting dynamics to it, though. I think really when you're looking at voter turnout and who makes up the electorate, that's really going to play into who ends up winning this election. It's sort of a strange thing that usually the Republicans do better in the South and the Democrats do better in the Northeast and in the West. And in the Midwestern states are sort of usually where the toss-up states are. This time it's a little bit backwards, whereas the more Midwestern states are running a little more red, but yet the South is more in play this year for the Democrats. I think a lot of that has to do with the breakdown of who is in those places and, frankly, who makes up the electorate in those states and sort of the changing demographics in the country. I think the Midwest still has a lot of older white voters that don't have college degrees, and there is a difference in terms of how those people are polling versus people that are either a minority or have some sort of a college education where they have a college degree. They are breaking more for the Democrats. So that's putting states that traditionally hadn't been in play before, it's putting them more in play in this election year. So states like North Carolina is actually probably going to be easier for Hillary Clinton to win than Iowa will be, whereas Obama won Iowa but lost North Carolina. Like I said, I do have a personal preference, but I'm going to try and leave that to the side and not really let that color exactly what I'm doing in terms of how I'm making my prediction. I will let you know sort of some of the background in terms of where I'm getting my information. Most of the information I am getting is from the site 270towin.com. If you want to check these out, they have a page where they have all of the state polling for every state. I'm going to be referencing that a lot as I'm going through some of the battleground states. But that's where I'm getting that information, is I'm getting that information from 270towin.com and really looking at how the state polling is in those individual states. So let's go ahead, take a look at the battlegrounds and exactly who I think has the best shot in which states, and then I'll give you my overall prediction. So this is going to start out with the typical battleground states that you see that most of the news outlets are going to consider these are the battlegrounds for this particular election. We're starting out with Hillary Clinton at 200 electoral votes and Donald Trump at 164 electoral votes. But I want to take a step back for a moment, because if you go back, I started looking at the state polling in August, but the state polling didn't really start getting filled in until probably mid-September is really when you can start to take a look at where you had data from all the states, or at least from most of the states. And at that point, if you look at the way the map looked from there forward, I put three different categories. I had if a state was safe for a candidate, if it was likely for a candidate, if it was lean for a candidate. And the way I did that was in looking at the polling numbers and the difference between the two candidates. If someone was 15 percentage points or higher, I considered that a safe state for that particular candidate. If they were between 10 and 15%, I considered that a likely state for them. If they were 5% to 10%, then I considered that a lean for that particular candidate. And anything that was under 5% on either side was considered a toss-up. So if you take out any state that was ever a toss-up or only a lean, this is what you come up with. So you have all the states that are in red were always either safe or likely for Trump. All the states that are in blue were either safe or likely for Clinton. And that puts the electoral count at 187 for Hillary Clinton and 96 for Donald Trump. And you can already see that there is an inherent advantage that the Democrats have on the electoral map. And if you move forward to what my final map looked like when I was looking at this on this past weekend, this is where you end up. The darkest blue and red are the ones that are safe for those individual candidates. The ones that are sort of the medium color are those that are likely for that candidate, and then the lightest shade is those that are lean for that candidate. And once again, it's the same percentages that I said earlier in terms of where they fall. So it would be either if it's the darkest color, that means it's 15% or higher. If it's between 10 to 15%, then it's the medium color. And if it's 5 to 10%, then it's that lightest color. So this is where you end up with in this map at that point. So you can see right away that once again, the map still favors the Democrats in terms of where they are in the Electoral College. And basically, they're just 1 or 2 states away from getting over the magic number of 270 if all of their lean states hold. The next thing I did is I took a look at all the polling numbers and said, let's forget about for a moment. Let's forget about the idea of who's what the percentage difference is. Let's just see who's always, if someone's always ahead in a state, and there was never a poll that had the other party up. And for this, I looked back for the last month. So from the beginning of October through the beginning of November, whether or not one candidate always had a lead. And in the states that have the dark color, that is the case. They always had the lead, and there has never been a poll that came out that showed the other party was ahead. For those states that are the lighter shade of color, it's because basically there was one outlier that had the other party ahead. Or in the case of Utah, it wasn't that Hillary was ahead, but it had Evan McMullin actually had a lead in one of the polls a couple weeks back. So that's essentially what you're looking at with those states. Is you're looking at states where the one candidate had the lead for the whole month, except for one poll that sort of ended up being an outlier when looking at all the polls in total. So with that in mind, let's take a step back and go back to the battleground map that I had up there earlier. Even though Utah and Alaska were not considered in those consistent polling states, I'm still going to put them in the Republican column. I think the Alaska one was a bit of an outlier, and I don't honestly think Evan McMullin has a chance to win Utah, and I think that the Republicans end up holding on to Utah. Once again, this shows the battleground states after you take out the battleground states and put in the states that are pretty much safe for the various candidates. It puts Hillary Clinton at 200 and it puts Donald Trump at 164. Now we're going to start adding some states in terms of the way I'm looking at it, and I think how these states end up falling. And I'm going to use that based on basically the consistent polling numbers that I was talking about earlier. So the first thing I'll do is add in the blue states for Colorado, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. That's a total of 55 electoral votes. In all 4 of those states, Hillary Clinton has been ahead in every poll that's come out, or there might have been one where there was a tie. But Donald Trump never had a lead in any of the polls in those 4 states. In many cases, it might have been within 5%, and that's why I would have considered it a toss-up state. But when you look at polling that is consistently always showing one person with a lead, even if it is only a 3-point lead, that certainly says something. And it's for that reason that I think that those 4 states will go for Hillary. For the same reason, I'm also going to add in Iowa and Georgia into the Republican column. And I think that, I know there was some talk about, the Democrats trying to win in some non-traditional states in terms of where they usually win, and Georgia was one of those, and so was Arizona. But I think Georgia was just one step too far, and it's really going to be difficult for the Democrats to be competitive there right now. So that's another 22 electoral votes for Donald Trump. The next add-in I'm going to do is for Arizona. Once again, I think that that was probably one that was just a little bit of a stretch for Hillary Clinton to try and make a play for Arizona. There is obviously a higher Hispanic vote there, so that was probably the reason why they thought that that state could potentially be in play. And if there is sort of an upset in terms of, you know, this map, that would probably be one of the states that you would look at in terms of, you know, where a party that I'm saying should win ends up losing. So I think that this is a state where ultimately the Republican tradition that is there and the fact that it's gone Republican in almost every election, I think will hold true again, and those 11 electoral votes will go to the Republicans. The next state I'm going to add in is Ohio, and this is a traditionally swing state. In fact, it's been right on every election since 1960. 1960 was the last time it was wrong when it went for Nixon and Kennedy won. But this is a state that I think is going to fall into some of those demographics I was talking about at the beginning of the video, where it's more of an older white electorate in comparison to some of the other states. And it's for that reason that I think that plays well to Donald Trump's strengths. And for that reason, I think Donald Trump will end up winning that state. That puts us at a total of 255 electoral votes for Hillary Clinton and 215 for Donald Trump. The next ones I'm going to add in is a total of 14 electoral votes for Hillary Clinton. That's 13 from the state of Virginia, where there was really only one poll that had Donald Trump with a lead in the last month. All the other polls have shown consistently that Hillary has been ahead. And I'm also adding in the 2nd Congressional District from Maine as a Hillary Clinton win. That's similar to Virginia. All the polling that was in there basically was showing Hillary ahead except for one. So for that reason, I'll go ahead and put that one in the blue column as well. And it should be noted that Maine and Nebraska obviously have the quirky thing with their electoral votes that you can win a congressional district and get an electoral vote without winning the whole state. They're the only two states that do that. Of course, only one time has that ever come into play in either one of those states, and that was in 2008 when President Obama won one of the electoral votes from Nebraska. Once again, I don't think that that's going to end up being something that ends up happening. It's a rare instance that it would, but it's a possibility that Donald Trump does pull out an electoral vote in Maine. But I think ultimately all 4 of those electoral votes will go to Hillary Clinton. And that puts us at 269 electoral votes for Hillary Clinton, which means that even if Donald Trump were to sweep the remaining 4 states that I show on the map here, it would only result in a tie of 269 to 269. So he could not hit the magic number of 270 if this were to hold true. Ultimately, I don't think that's going to matter anyway, because the next 2 states I'm going to add in are Florida and Nevada, and I'm going to put them in Hillary Clinton's column. A lot of the polling in these 2 states have shown both candidates with the lead, but ultimately, I think both of these states are states where Hillary has had more of a lead than Donald Trump has. And also, I think that these are 2 states where the Hispanic vote is obviously going to be very critical. And I think it's an inherent flaw that the Republicans have right now, that they are losing the Hispanic vote by such high numbers, especially when you have a candidate like Donald Trump with his stance on immigration. I think that's really going to be a strike against him. And there's already indications from some of the early voting exit polling to suggest that the Hispanic vote is actually higher in some of these states. So some of the polling that has even come out in some of these states, if that holds true, would end up being probably a little off and underrepresenting the Democratic vote, because when they do the polling, obviously, they aren't just reporting the raw numbers. They're weighting it so that they get an electorate that they think is going to match what the electorate is. So if they end up underweighting the Hispanic vote, and the Hispanic vote is actually higher in those states, that would probably tend to favor the Democrats on Election Day. So for that reason, I'll go ahead and put those states in the Democrat column, which puts Hillary Clinton over the magic number and puts her at 304. It also does leave 2 more states left, which just for sake of my argument and seeing if I get close in terms of my prediction, I'm going to split those 2. I'm going to say that Hillary goes ahead and holds on to New Hampshire, but Donald Trump holds on to North Carolina, and both those states go the same way that they went in 2012. We'll say that this is one state. North Carolina was a state I had been going back and forth on over the last couple of days, and probably early on, a couple days ago, I had it blue, and I've recently switched it red. I think that ultimately that will be what ends up happening. I think the Republicans will be able to hold on to North Carolina, which is more of a solidly Republican state historically. But that is a state that I could see going for Hillary Clinton. If you're a Donald Trump supporter, what should you be looking for in terms of if you don't like my prediction and what would change? The states that you would really need to see change are Florida, Nevada, and Virginia. I think those are the three that he would really need to flip, or some sort of combination of states like Colorado and New Hampshire or something like that instead of Virginia. But those three states would probably be the most likely states if they flip that would give Donald Trump a victory, which would be Florida, Virginia, and Nevada. I think are the three most likely that would end up giving the election to Donald Trump. But ultimately, like I said, my prediction is going to be Hillary Clinton, 308 electoral votes to Donald Trump, 230. So that's my prediction. Go ahead and leave your prediction in the comments below. We'll see who gets closest. And make sure whatever you do, you get out there and vote tomorrow, regardless of what you feel about this election and the candidates that we have to pick between. Go ahead, make sure you get out, exercise your right, and vote. Usually I end my videos with a Fly Eagles Fly, but in honor of the election, let's just say God bless America.